welcome again. I think if I do my math right, this is, I think, the fourth in a series of video logs that we're doing about the Virginia's return to Normandy for 2019. If you missed any of the other three that I did, you haven't missed much. We talked about the mission, how we're going to do it, who's a Virginian, and how she came to be here, and some history stuff. But today, I plan to introduce you to Virginian. So here I am at little Flaybob Airport, and Flaybob, little airport near downtown Riverside. It was, I think, the fifth oldest airport in the state of California, and I think the oldest in the LA Basin. And I remember when I learned to fly in the LA Basin out of Orange County Airport, John Wayne, a long time ago. And coming over here was always entertaining, a little intimidating for fairly new pilots. It's not the longest runway around at 3,000 feet, playing along for the stuff I usually fly. But it's pretty narrow. And if you look out there, when you fly the downwind, you're facing right into that mountain, so you're forced to turn across our base and base to final, which I think is a good thing. I see too many students today being taught how to be an airline pilot, and they do 2-mile down finals or downwinds to a 2-mile long base, and it's kind of ridiculous. But so here I think you're taught good habits, but it is intimidating for some. Fun little airport. Small challenge, a little bit of a challenge to bring in a DC-3 C-47 in here. It's not the longest runway around, and being only 50 foot wide, it feels like a postage stamp. So this is Flaybob. So this is where the Virginian lives, and just so happens we have a steerman here, and I'm lucky enough to be able to fly this airplane. And I bring it up because if you were a World War II wannabe pilot, this is likely the first airplane you ever flew. They were called PTs in the Army Air Corps, primary trainer. The Navy's called them something else, same airplane. I think they had like 3 versions, all the same airplane with 3 different motors that they had. 220 horse Continental Lycoming. I think they had a Jacobs that was a little more horsepower. And for you steerman buffs, so this is not exactly a stock steerman. This has got the Pratt & Whitney 985 450 horse motor, so I have twice the horsepower of a stock steerman, but it still behaves much like a stock one. And so the story I've always been told that, you know, a cadet flying these had like 6 to 10 hours to solo in it, and if not, then they weren't destined to be a pilot. They either became a navigator or bomber or radio guy, something other than a pilot. So the steerman did a good job of washing people out. You know, I'm not a high time pilot by any means, 3,000 hours, maybe half of it in tailwheelers. And of the dozen or so tailwheelers that I've flown, this is by far the one you have to be on your toes with. It's very unforgiving of poor technique or inattention. Don't get lazy with this thing. I tell people the steerman tries to commit suicide all the time. Not that I risk getting hurt. If somebody told me to crash an airplane, this would be one I'd want to crash, but it doesn't object at all to scratching itself up. So it's fun to fly, it's a challenge to fly, and maybe that's why it's so attractive to so many. Anyway, so you went from a PT steerman, you would go to a BT-13 typically, basic trainer, primary trainer, basic trainer. And one of the groups that's be flying this thing will be introduced to him later on, actually owns a BT-13. Not many of those left. They got cannibalized because they had this engine on them, and they hung the firewall forward on a BT-13 on a steerman like this and put a hopper in it, and you had yourself a crop duster. So an awful lot of them were sacrificed to that industry. That's why so many steermen still exist today, because of that crop dusting industry. But so they went from a BT, you would go to the T6. The BT-13, if you want to Google it up, see what it looks like. It looks an awful lot like a T6, but it's a whole different airplane. It's fixed gear, not retractable. But you went from a BT to an AT, advanced trainer, the T6, and put your time in there. If you're going to be a single engine fighter pilot or whatever, you went straight into that. If you're going to be a C-47 pilot, you went from the BT or the T6, you would go to AT-11, the Twin Beach. Get your time in that, and then from that on to whatever multi-engine airplane you ever flew, be it the B-17 or C-47 or whatever. So that's just a brief thing about the steerman. It's just sitting here. And now, see Flaybob Airport. If you're looking for a $100 hamburger, Great little place to come get it. But here's a Virginia Ann. So for right now, before we get too involved in this, I'll just do a quick little walk around. And then the next video, I think what we'll do is how we pre-flight, how we get this thing ready to go. I've seen a lot of videos on DC-3s, not too many really explain exactly how we operate. And there are a few out there, but not too many. So hopefully we'll check that box for you. So there she is. She didn't have that door on D-Day by any means, so that's completely converted back to passenger use after the war. There's a plane next to us here. It's another one that has a similar door on it, but it was a C-53 during the war. Anyway, there's a serial number. I think I talked about how that came to be. Put a 4 in front of it, and that's a complete serial number. Rather than being redundant, they left the 4 off of all these vintage airplanes back then. You know, why put a 4 in front of all of them? So there's their serial number. There's some a couple of unique things about this model, which I'll cover later. But quick little walk around. Has all their gust locks on. Yeah, if you look over there, there's the D-Day doll. Odd that little tiny Flaybob Airport. I think we're down to like 14 or 15 going across the Atlantic, but 3 of them are here. D-Day doll's going. Virginia Ann, of course. And if you look down there, I'll probably walk around there if you can see it in the video. That's the Flaybob Express, and she's going also. And I'm filming this on the Friday. What the heck is the date today? May 2nd, I think it is, thereabouts. And we're going to start heading east on Monday. And so is that one. This one, the D-Day doll, leaves a couple days later. They have a different agenda. They're part of the CAF organization. They've got a bunch of stops to make to show her off to several of their CAF chapters. So, I see everybody's loading up. Last minute stuff. We're all crossing our fingers that everything goes as planned. 75-year-old airplanes, what could go wrong? Welcome to the D-Day doll.
You know, I think we filmed the job.
For Virginia Ann, you'll notice how propeller's a little bit different. That's part of being a Hyper 3. This is got converted back in the early 50s. We have our 2000 engines instead of the typical Pratt Whitney 1830s. D-Day doll here next to me actually has Wrights in it, 1820s. So that's when we do a walk around pre-flight. I'll show you some more. Like I talked about where that X5 means, that was their squadron identification. And the Virginia Ann, we met the family this last summer. That was the wife of the captain that usually flew this airplane. Not on D-Day, but most other times he was the captain, and that was his wife. So yeah, we met the 3 kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids on the way to Oshkosh this last year. So we're pretty proud of her. We painted her like 2 winters ago. Actually had a picture of her from World War II. That's kind of how we got that's exactly how I wanted to paint her. And a lot of airplanes from that period, they put the invasion stripes on. I think I talked about that too. Even they only lasted like a week or 2 before they had to remove them. But all nicely masked and painted on. Like I mentioned back then, they did it with big old white brushes, and they only had a little bit of time to do it, so it didn't look anything like that. So I apologize for poor cameramanship here. I'm still trying to figure this out. Little GoPro Hero 7 holding it, trying to do the job for me. So there's the exterior look at the Virginia Ann. Like I said, game plan now would be next one I'll try and do how we pre-flight her, how we get her ready to go, and some things about how we operate her, which is not much different than anybody else that operates a C-47 DC-3. But there are some things that are interesting to bring up. There's a couple things we don't all agree upon, but interesting. So welcome to the Virginia Ann. Look forward to seeing you at the next one.